Hey bike farmers, thanks for clicking in. So this bike right here represents my absolute least favorite part of owning a bike shop. The inherent problem of this bike is exactly what led to my only legitimate one-star review. That one-star review, ironically, is what inspired the Why Are Bicycle Mechanics Such Assholes video that basically launched this channel and changed my life. But these are often referred to as rideable bicycle-like objects. You can find them at the big box stores, the Wal-Marts, Targets, Dick's Sporting Goods, that sort of thing. There's a lot of shops that have just decided, you know what, it's not worth it. We're just gonna turn away this business. The way I see it is, with these bikes, I basically have a 50-50 chance of being a hero or a crook. It's a pretty cut and dry situation, but there is some nuance to consider. It's really difficult to talk to customers about it. It really becomes an ethical dilemma. I don't know, I do a lot of thinking about this. I've been at it for a very long time. It's still the same problem today that it was for the owners of the bicycle clinic where I got my start, 30 years ago. They ran into this problem all the time. To kind of help get the point across, I have made a little list here. Let's start with doing what the customer asks. So this customer brought me this bike because it's not shifting well and they think they need a tune-up, which I would agree. A bike like this needs to be completely gone through, bike farmer style, back to front, clean, lube, and adjust, and we can get it working pretty good, I think. However, I just don't think it's worth it because the quality of this bike is so low that I can do all those things and it could stop working tomorrow. So right away, if I take money for service on this bike, I feel like I'm ripping people off. There's also a good chance I can make things worse. This stuff just isn't made to be worked on. It's disposable. Because of the low quality on these things, a lot of times if you just tighten down an anchor bolt, it'll strip out and then you got this whole problem. That would lead to a customer service nightmare. You have to have that conversation. That's a complete nightmare for a guy like me because it's a lose-lose situation. And then the worst case scenario is I do all of those things, something catastrophic fails on this bike in the front end, they flip over, end up eating pavement, and I have a liability suit on my hands and I can't afford that. Then again, one family has a bad experience with some jarts in the 80s and you don't see them on the shelves anymore. I don't know, we don't see a whole lot of lawsuits, so maybe it's all in my head. Okay, so now on the flip side, if I do what I think is right, which is, I'm sorry, but I can't service your bike, I would suggest that you buy a shop quality used bike from me because those are dependable and serviceable and high quality and hold their value and make economic sense. I could try to have that conversation with them, but that just makes them think that I'm trying to sell them something. It makes me look slimy. Or in the case of my one-star review, I deeply, deeply offended that woman by telling her that the Walmart bike that she bought her kid wasn't worth putting training wheels on, which it isn't. Training wheels are tricky, they take a lot of time. I would have to charge you $90 an hour to put training wheels on this bike that isn't worth $50. I'm gonna come across as being very snobby and elitist in this video because I just gotta tell the truth. That's the thing, is we start talking to people about this and it's like, oh, they're really low quality, these are Walmart products, blah, blah, blah. And they just think we're bike snobs, we're elitist, that, we're the rich people, they're the poor people. It ends up being like all these other issues. It's awful. It's the worst conversation to ever have anytime. I hate being put in this position. So I've got a pretty good example here of a rideable bicycle-like object. I'm gonna go through it, I'm going to clean it, I'm going to lube it, I'm going to adjust it. I think this one's gonna turn out fine, but while I'm doing that, I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about this problem, why it's tough for shop owners, and how you can be a smarter consumer. Might get a little deep, might be super chill, I don't know. You can kick back and relax, and I'm gonna get started. All right, per the usual, I put it in little and little and pop the wheels off and set them aside. This one's got a bolt-on rear wheel, 15 millimeter does the trick. Oh. That's the first thing, is they're a little harder to work on. Yep, this quick release was loose, so that came from the store. Loose quick release, great. First thing I noticed right away was that the seat is slid so forward on the seat post. I thought this clamp was on backwards. You see that all the time. Yep, see that's loose. You'll see these seats cocked up and whatever. I've heard that Dick's Sporting Goods now like has a training program for bike assembly, and you have to like get certified and all that, but you know how that goes. But I'm just gonna slide that back an inch. I don't know this person, but I know that that's not deliberate, or I'm pretty sure. You know, I have to make a lot of assumptions. I've got decades of experience with this, and I know that this is a low bike IQ customer. They don't know, you know, how the bike is supposed to fit or where their seat post is. So I'm just putting this reflector down the seat post a little bit where it's not in the way, because it was just flopping around up here on the skinny part. This is how these bikes go. It's every step along the way we're gonna find dumb little things. It's just they're consumer grade products. They're not made to be maintained. They're disposable. And there's a terrible argument out there that, you know, they're not made to be maintained for somebody who has money, you know, like some people can't afford to maintain it. And it's like, I just don't think you can afford to go buy a $250, $350 bike that doesn't work. You know what I mean? Where you can come to me and buy a $350 used bike that works great and always will, and is durable and serviceable for not a lot of money. Now she's dumping $100 into a bike that I can't really guarantee the work on, or, you know, if she'd have known or, you know, understood that an old used bike is way better than this, that'd be helpful. Here is the barrel adjuster here, and the rear derailleur is turned way out. I always like to start, well, we can just turn it all the way in, okay, and then you back it out 3, 4, 5 turns. You know, usually just until the silver part gets above the plastic, and then we'll manually tighten that cable. I guess we could do that now. There we go. So I don't always loosen the cable to lube it. You don't really need to, but I did on this bike because, well, I did. It's how the cookie crumbled. And you know what? Oh, I dropped my wrench. We're just gonna loosen that one up too. And in the interest of good content and being a good person, if I'm gonna go through the trouble and service this bike, let's just loosen the rear brake cable too, because there's no cable stops on it. It's a constant piece of housing going through the frame, so it's hard to get at that cable to lube it, and we gotta loosen it up anyway. So we're gonna loosen all the cables. Even the front brake. Okay. So you see these front brake pads, they're like unused. Rear brake pads, basically unused. This is the rear tire, basically unridden. I'm gonna take a little Behold furniture polish and get some dust off this bike. Hey bike farmers, just a quick note while there's a lull in the action. If you've made it this far, I assume you liked the video enough to click the like button. If you really like it, let us know in the comments below. And if you're into bicycle content for regular people, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're able to support more directly, click on the super thanks button and send me some taco money. Or better yet, join the channel as a monthly sustaining member. All of these things will help grow the channel organically and give the Bike Farmer YouTube channel a strong future. Thanks again for watching. Now let's get back to the bikes. All right, these handlebars kind of bothered me right away too. They're leaned back, you see this all the time. Pretty much guaranteed that these bolts are all gonna be loose, which they are not really torqued down. But the levers are sticking up and the bar kind of seemed to be at a weird angle. I just wanted to kind of tilt it forward just a smidge. I take these liberties on these bikes because you're pretty much guaranteed that these are, you know, the nicest way I know how to say it is low bike IQ people. They're just looking for something to ride around. They don't know what they don't know. They don't know that just a little subtle change in the handlebars changes how the bike feels and handles, and I do know that. So, you know, I have to make a lot of assumptions. That's the tricky part. You know, I mean, that's the tricky part of retail anyway, specialty retail. Okay, so we're gonna lube shift cables here. So because we disconnected the cables, I have some good slack to get, some lube down in there. But still, it's gonna be difficult to really get some good lubrication there. Okay, we're gonna be a little bit careful with how far we pull this out. You don't want to pull too hard and pull that cable tip off the other end and have it go through the housing, because chances are is it's frayed a little bit and then you can't get it back through and you got a whole bunch of other problems. Another reason these bikes suck to work on is little things like that can happen and really be a time suck. I know, I should just be a better mechanic, right? But these problems, I mean, they exist on other bikes, but easier to work on. All these cables are cheap. All this housing is cheap. These barrel adjusters are cheap. These bolts and the stem and everything's cheap, so it's like super easy to strip the stem bolts out. You have like a 50-50 chance of really making things worse for the person, and that's really hard for people to understand. Because like most people are thinking of things in terms of cars, and there are quality standards, and so things are more robust. It becomes an issue of quality, and people don't understand that because they assume that the quality is the same and they just don't really know for sure. But we're bound by the physical limitations and restraints of the machine. Now, I always default to wanting to do the best thing for the customer and the person, and I try to be respectful, and I really, really work hard to protect and preserve the dignity of anyone who brings me a bike. And a lot of people identify with the bike or what they purchased or that decision, and they know that if I tell them, say bad things about their bike, tell them it's low quality and a bad product and whatever, they take it personally and think that I'm saying that about them, and I'm really not, and I try hard. Then again, they almost always come to me in some sort of big old pickup truck. And if you're gonna sit there and call me an elitist bike snob because I'm trying to do what's best for you and your machine, then I can judge you for your big pickup truck and tell you what type of person that makes you. So this is the back side of the front brake here. And this is just not even hardly moving. It's just awful. So I'm gonna use some gravity here. Try to get some tri-flow back behind it. Instead of just taking this brake off and sanding everything down and doing it the right way, I'm just gonna see if I can get some lubrication in there and loosen this up enough to get it functioning. I have some other cheater tricks to do. This seems to be working pretty good. Yeah, so it's loosening up now. And we'll do the other one, which isn't as sticky, but I can tell is just as dry and unlubed. These bikes actually require more work than a shop quality bike. So there's another dilemma, right? You charge the same price for more work that produces worse results because the quality is so low. Okay, up here in the truthing stand, the truth of the matter, since this is where we tell the truth, is I am always trying to do what's best for the bicycle first, and then do what's best for the customer second. It is none of my business, the economic status, the financial status, I don't know if you call it status, their ability to pay for it or whatever. I should just say, okay, well, I see this, this, and this on this machine, and it's gonna cost you this, which is the same as the person that brings me the high-end Trek. It should be the same, and I just offer it to them and they take it or leave it, right? Ethically, I'm clean, except that I know deep in my heart that if they choose that, economically, I'm setting them up for failure. All it is a Band-Aid fix. I want to get them out of this jam that they're in, which is perpetual buying shit and having it fail and not being able to enjoy their life on a bicycle like they want to. you know, because they bought a piece of shit bike, you know, and I want to sell them something decent. So I go way out of my way. I mean, I've designed a whole life around finding good quality bikes, you know, mid-90s mountain bikes and hybrids, tuning them up, and then making them available for the same price as this bike is at Dick's Sporting Goods now. I mean, some of these bikes are up to $450, and I'm like, man, I could be charging that, because the bikes I'm selling are so much better than these. The problem is that, you know, there's the consumerist marketing culture out there. And this is where it gets tricky, you know. This is like when people tell me that, oh, I'm only getting certain information from mainstream media, I don't know the real truth, you know. And that's the other thing. It's like there's like this weird, like, you know, you've got those people who don't believe me, you know, because they think I'm selling them something. But it really is, in this case, like those box stores are selling us crap, and we're like, oh, it's shiny and new, and like they look great, but people don't know, they don't understand the quality issues of it. Really, the people that are ripping us off are the box stores. And anyway, I've, you know, dedicated large amounts of my life into solving that problem. Now, part of that is just because it's the only way I know how to make money on bikes, but really the driving force is like affordable, good quality, decent bikes. And it's always better to buy reconditioned, used, shop quality bikes than a brand new bicycle, well, a brand new rideable bicycle shaped object from Dick's Sporting Goods or what have you. And I know in the comments you're going to tell me that Dick's Sporting Goods has started carrying Giant brand bikes, and there are next level Dick's Sporting Goods that are like REI kind of level, and they have bike departments, and they're selling shop quality bikes now, entry level bikes, and they're doing more like, it is kind of a mid quality, but they're decent. They are durable, they are using better cables and housing and brake pads and that, but they're still not bike shops. I mean, it's not the same. So that just makes it even more confusing. And this says Schwinn on the side, and I'll tell you that Schwinn made the most durable, the greatest American-made product of all time, I think, is like a 1970 Schwinn, bomb-proof. It's gonna be cockroaches and 70 Schwinns when the apocalypse happens. But then when they went bankrupt in the 80s and bought by private equity, and then Pacific Cycle bought them, and so you have, like, there's a version of this bike that's even shittier sold at Walmart. How does the average person know? It just says Schwinn on the side. In the 90s, Schwinn was making amazing mountain bikes for a few years, and they're awesome. The homegrown series are great bikes. And they made great road bikes made with Reynolds 853 tubing. They say Schwinn on the side. Like, ugh. The whole problem is so tricky. And when I'm talking to my community members around here that are, you know, it's just regular working class, salt of the earth people, and start talking like this, they just glass over, they think I'm lying to them. They don't want to be part of this world. And they just, like, I just want my Walmart bike to work. And I'm like, it can't. And then they're like, you're such a snob, I'm out of here. And it's so frustrating. And then even if I do fix it, they're like, you just charged me $100 and now my brakes are squeaking. Or you just charged me $100 and it's still throwing the chain, or whatever. And I'm like, there's nothing I can do about it. You know, that's how this bike is. You know, I tried. Ugh. Why am I doing this? I'm gonna get a wrench on the kickstand bolt down here, which isn't really worth showing you, but these kickstands are always loose. Ow, my wrench slipped. Ow. Ow. All right, fine, I'm gonna put a new dork disc on too, because that one's all cracking off. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3. Chiropractor. All right, brand new spoke protector here, and this is a nice one. The one that I just took off was super chintzy. I'll put a little grease on the threads here on the freewheel. Okay. I also greased the threads on the axle before. I don't know if you saw that. Okay, kickstand's good, brakes are lubed. Start putting this thing back together, huh? Okay, so that quick release is on there properly. Rear wheel's on tight, everything's trued, everything's lubed. Let's start putting these cables back on. Okay, so that's got a little bit of slack. We can pull that out. Front derailleur. Rear brake. Oh, so here I did it. I just pulled the cable tip off. I think we're okay. So these like to strip out, helps to throw a little bit of lube on it. God, these bikes just are hard to work on. Okay, this that brake pad is misaligned. We'll come back to it, but we'll get that realigned. Front brake, get that cable going the right way. So this rear brake pad is not hitting the rim very straight, and the brake is only pulling from one side. And so I could redo everything and readjust the brake tension and so on and so forth. But when I see that, it usually means that the wheel isn't in the frame straight. And I can see, if I use my fingers, that there's a lot more gap on this side over here than on the other side. So I'm gonna loosen up my axle and then pull this wheel over. So I'm just loosening up the left axle nut, pulling the wheel over, and that pulls the axle up into the dropout a little bit more. And that made a lot of difference. And then I'm gonna do the same on the drive side. So I'm kind of like walking it up. Loosen the nut, pull the wheel over, and tighten the nut. The most important thing is that you have the axle all the way up in the dropout. The second most important thing is the wheel's in straight so your brake pads hit. And if they don't, yeah, okay, so now it's working properly. But this one's still a little low. Again, these are really soft posts and nuts. You don't want to over torque anything. You know, you can touch this stuff and break it. It happens all the time with these bikes. It sucks. You got to use a very light hand working on department store bikes. Volunteer at your local co-op. You know, a lot of times these are, I call them charity bikes. Volunteers will fix them up and give them to kids. It's perfectly fine for that. Very low expectations that way. If there's no money exchanged, who cares? Ride it, have fun. Shall we see how it shifts? So she mentioned that she said that it wasn't shifting good and would drop the chain. Sometimes the chain would come off, she says. So the rear seems to be shifting swimmingly. And the front is awful. All right, let's zoom in on that, huh? Okay, so there's a few things going on. I think that the derailleur is a little crooked. I'm gonna loosen the clamp bolt back here. I'm just gonna give it a quick, tiny tweak. Oh, and I can see that it's down a little too low. Okay, you can just see how wiggly and floppy and cheap everything is. It makes it really hard to get it right. You know, it's just never gonna shift well. You know, we'll get it to access all the gears the best we can and just kind of manage our expectations. You know, and every time I loosen that anchor bolt and tighten it back down, I'm increasing my risk of really messing things up. Okay, so I just loosened the cable so I can raise the derailleur a smidge. I feel like I did a little too much there. And pull it away. You want a little bit of, like a millimeter or two of clearance from this outer cage over the big ring. So we're gonna start with the derailleur in the right position. You can just see how much wiggle that you got there? It's just, really makes it tough to get it right. And the chain line's all weird. Making excuses, right? They're legit though. These are legit gripes. All of them. It's every one of these bikes is like this. Okay, I'm gonna shift up into the low gear, which is the big cog in back. Big cog energy. Okay, and then this is the low limit screw. So I'm gonna turn it in a little bit. Check my cable tension. So the cable's tight and the derailleur is not rubbing right there. So here we are shifting up into the middle and back down. Seems to be working well. Okay, so if we go into the big, you hear all that grinding? It's over shifting. So I'm gonna shift down to that point, and then this is the high limit screw. Turn the high limit screw in till it doesn't want to screw anymore. Now no more grinding, but it still seems like this derailleur cage is kind of wonky and hanging out over there. I got a better angle on it now. I'm gonna loosen my clamp. Now everything's under tension right now, so I don't want to loosen it too much. And this is where I break something. But I just want to tap it into place. Okay. And when you tighten the clamp back down, a lot of times the derailleur will kind of move a bit. This one seemed to stay put pretty good. So I'm guessing that was the problem she was having, okay? So I think right there is where the ethical dilemma really comes into play, right? So I could have taken this bike, put it in the stand and done like a thorough like triage on it and figured out that that front derailleur was way out of adjustment right out of the gates, and that was very likely the problem that caused her to drop the bike off in the first place. She said it was throwing the train, dropping the chain or whatever. It was like overshifting. It was just bad, right? A derailleur adjustment, you know, 20, 25 bucks, something like that, to work those issues out, put some air in the tires, and she'd have a rideable bike. And that's months ago, you know, they brought it in for flat tires, and I was like, okay, we can fix that. But the bikes, they had two of them. I said they both need tune-ups, but they're rideable as is, meaning don't expect them to shift right. You can ride them, but they're gonna work like shit. And that's what happened, and she was fed up. So she probably took one bike ride after doing that and was like, this is stupid. And now is taking me up with my original device. You know what I mean? Like, I wanna respect that maybe they don't have a lot of money and this is a big deal. You know, I mean, there's been plenty of time in my life where there's no way I'd spend $100 on a bike tune-up. Like, I had much more important things to spend $100 on. I get it, but it's the economics of it. Like, a bike shop can't make money and survive on $25 derailleur adjustments either. So we adjust that derailleur, but all of the other issues with the bike is still there, and it's going to be a series of $25 adjustments forever, and maybe that's better for them. I don't know, but I do know the quality of these bikes are so low that it's gonna happen anyway. So now I'm charging $100 for a tune-up, and the bike's gonna work great, and it might last forever. I mean, I know people that have ridden Huffies to Madison and back and put 1,000 miles on them, and they're no problems. And like, I don't know, it's just too many unknown variables to enter into that transactional relationship and take money and be liably responsible and all of that. But it's like, should I just fix that for 25 bucks or do the whole thing? Should I ask the customer? Do they understand? Are they informed enough? Is it up to me to inform them? When I inform them, do they trust me? Do they think I'm selling them something? You see what I'm getting at? It's a very much a big problem everywhere. All right, so finally, we've got the front brakes here, and they actually feel pretty good. Nice and snappy. Nothing's rubbing. Oh, that was pretty loose. Man, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, folks. Leave that. Oh. I always do this backwards for the camera angle. Tighten those guys down. So I'm just gonna, yep, so that lock ring was a little loose. That's gonna help tremendously. Those bottom brackets like to loosen up, so you know, these are the things that they're not gonna do at Dick's, but I'm able to do here. So just made a huge improvement just by doing that. Okay, last thing left to do here. Throw some air in the tires. My compressor hasn't gone off today. I've only got 40 pounds in it, but 40 should be good enough for these. Usually I put in a little more, but that's good and firm. It's the middle of winter. They're not going to ride until spring anyway. Make them firm and go for a ride. And there you have it. We did make some huge improvements. Like I said, I think it was the front derailleur was the main problem, but now everything is cleaned and lubed. I've checked everything, you know, greased the axle bolts and made sure that the wheels aren't going to fall off, fixed the saddle up a little bit, you know, even just tightening that clamp that was pretty loose. Adjusting the handlebar angle just a little bit is gonna, you know, these are things that they probably won't even notice, but in the long run, I know it's the right thing to do. But what do you think? What's the right play here? Is it the right play to like kind of protect the customer's pocketbook by not ripping them off by taking service dollars for some unserviceable product? Or did I just prove to you that this is a perfectly serviceable product, this is good enough, and I'm not necessarily responsible for what happens down the road? You know, am I making a bigger deal out of this than it needs to be? And am I a judgmental prick and don't like poor people? What is it? You know, what's the deal here? Am I a bike snob? You can tell me in the comments, decide for yourself. Please stop buying bikes from big box stores. Go find a nice, good, used bike store somewhere. Or if you're a little bit savvy, watch Bike Farmer, do it yourself. I mean, that's the best thing. If you like this content and want to see more, please like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, share it with your friends. Consider sending a super thanks. That way we can eliminate all the hoo-ha and middlemen, and you can send money directly to your favorite content creator, the Bike Farmer, me, and I will take that money and go right across the street and I get tacos and I fill my belly, and that gives my body energy to make more videos. If that's too much for you, join the channel as a monthly sustaining member. You just click the join button. I don't even know how it works. You know, for you, are you gonna miss $10 a month? It's just like that subscription you forgot about and haven't canceled for a year and a half. Go cancel a subscription, take whatever that's worth and give it to the Bike Farmer instead. But for yourself, the number one thing you can do is click that notification bell so you and your bikes can stay tuned.